I am 26 years old, and my life has been a quiet series of responsible choices. I work a steady job in administration that pays the bills. I pack my own lunch. I brew my own coffee. I do this because I have a goal: a small house, a patch of green grass that is all mine. Every dollar I save is a brick in that future house. My car, a 15-year-old sedan, is a testament to that goal. It rattles on the highway and the air conditioning gave up last summer, but it runs, most of the time. Last Tuesday, it did not. It shuddered to a stop in the middle of a busy intersection during rush hour. The engine went silent, and a plume of steam erupted from under the hood. Horns blared around me. I felt my face flush with heat, a mix of embarrassment and panic. I called for a tow truck, but they said it would be at least an hour. My only other option was my brother, Leo. I hesitated before calling him. Leo is 2 years older, and in our family's eyes, he is the son. He runs his own tech startup, drives a car that costs more than my annual salary, and never misses an opportunity to remind me of the gap between our lives. But I was stranded. I swallowed my pride and dialed his number. He answered on the third ring. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice already impatient. I explained the situation, my words small and apologetic. He sighed dramatically. "Fine, I'll come get you. Where are you? The corner of sad and pathetic?" He was not far off. An hour later, his gleaming black sports car pulled up behind my dead one. He did not get out. He just laid on the horn until I gathered my bag and hurried over. The tow truck had just arrived, and the driver was already hooking up my car. I slid into the passenger seat, the smell of new leather filling my nose. "Thanks for coming," I said quietly. Leo did not look at me. He just glanced in his rearview mirror at my car being hoisted onto the truck bed. He sneered, a cruel little twist of his lips. "You know, you could avoid all this drama if you just bought a new one, poor girl." The words landed like a slap. Poor girl. It was not just a comment on my car. It was a summary of how he saw my entire existence. Careful, small, and lacking. I did not say anything. I just stared out the window, my fingernails digging into my palms. The silence in the car was thick and heavy, broken only by the engine's expensive purr. He thought he was helping, but all he was doing was pouring salt on a wound. I decided then that something had to change. I just did not know what. The ride to my apartment was unbearable. Leo spent the entire time on his phone, barking orders at someone he called his head of development. He talked about seed funding and server capacity and a launch party I knew would be obnoxiously lavish. He was performing, putting on a show of his own importance for my benefit. I was his captive audience. "We just secured another round of funding," he announced to the air, not to me. "The investors are practically begging to give us money." I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Any response I gave would be wrong. If I sounded impressed, he would see it as pathetic envy. If I sounded indifferent, he would call me jealous. So I stayed silent. He pulled up in front of my modest apartment building, the car's engine a low growl that seemed to mock the quiet street. "Well, here you are," he said, as if he had just completed a heroic quest. "Thanks again, Leo," I mumbled, grabbing my purse. "Try not to let your life fall apart before you get a new car," he said with a smirk. "It's a bad look." I felt a hot flare of anger. That was it. I had to say something. "My life is not falling apart, Leo. I'm saving my money." He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Saving what? Your pennies? For what? A down payment on a shoebox in 20 years? Just get a loan. Live a little." "I don't want to live on loans," I said, my voice firmer now. "I want to own something, really own it, not just pretend to." His smile vanished. For a second, his eyes were cold. "You have no idea what you're talking about." He was right. I did not. But the way he said it felt like a warning. I got out of the car and slammed the door a little harder than I intended. He peeled away from the curb, tires squealing, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, fuming. Later that evening, my mother called. Her name is Helen. Her calls always followed a predictable pattern. First, she would ask how I was. Then she would relay some glowing news about Leo. "I heard your car broke down, dear," she started, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. "Leo told me he had to rescue you." "My car had a problem, Mom, and Leo gave me a ride," I corrected her. I wasn't a damsel in distress. "Oh, of course not, dear. You're so capable," she said, but the words were hollow. "It's just that Leo worries. He said you should really consider getting a newer model. For safety." His version of worrying was calling me a poor girl. I snapped, the anger from earlier bubbling up again. There was a pause on the line. "Clara, you know how he is," she said, her voice shifting into its familiar peacemaker tone. "He's just teasing. He's been under so much pressure with his business. He's doing so well, you know. He just closed a huge deal." That was her solution to everything. Leo's success was a blanket excuse for his cruelty. It was the justification for him treating me like I was less than him. Because he had money, his flaws were just quirks. Because I did not, my choices were failures. "His pressure doesn't give him a right to be a jerk," I said. "Don't use that language about your brother," she chided. "You should be proud of him. He's building an empire. You could learn a thing or two from his ambition." I felt my resolve harden. "I'm plenty ambitious, Mom. My ambition just doesn't involve a fancy car and insulting my sister." "He loves you, Clara. He just shows it in his own way." I knew it was pointless to argue. For my mother, Leo's success was her success. It validated her. My quiet, steady life did not offer the same vicarious thrill. "I have to go, Mom. The mechanic just called about my car." It was a lie, but I could not listen to her defend him for one more second. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall of my small living room. Every piece of furniture was secondhand, carefully chosen and paid for in cash. My life was not a bad look. It was a plan. A plan he and my mother refused to respect. The poor girl comment echoed in my head. But it was no longer just an insult. It was a challenge. The next day, the mechanic confirmed my fears. The engine was shot. The cost to repair it would be more than the car was worth. "Honestly, miss," the mechanic said kindly, "it's time to let her go." I felt a surprising pang of sadness. That car had been my partner in savings, the symbol of my discipline. Now it was just a hunk of metal waiting for the scrapyard. Getting around without a car was difficult. I had to rely on the bus, which added an hour to my commute each way. After a week of this, I was exhausted and frustrated. I had to get a new car, which meant dipping into my house fund. The thought was painful. It felt like a defeat. It felt like Leo had won. One evening, I was complaining about my commute to my friend, Sarah. We had been friends since college, and she was the only one who truly understood my family dynamic. "So you have to buy a car," she said, sipping her tea. "It's not the end of the world. It's a setback, not a failure." "It feels like one," I confessed. "Every time I have to transfer buses, I can hear Leo's voice in my head. Poor girl." "He's a first-class jerk, Clara. We've established this," she said. "But don't let his voice be the one that defines you. You're the most financially responsible person I know. You're doing this the right way." "It doesn't feel like it," I said. "It feels like I'm being punished for being careful." "Maybe you just need a little break," she suggested. "Let's go out this weekend. Do something fun. Forget about your brother and your car and your savings for one night." I was hesitant. Going out meant spending money I had not budgeted for, but the thought of one night of freedom was tempting. "Okay," I agreed, "but somewhere cheap." Sarah rolled her eyes but smiled. "Of course. Your treat. I'll pay." The weekend came and Sarah was true to her word. She took me to a cozy little restaurant we both loved. We talked for hours about work, about her latest dating disaster, about anything and everything except my family. It was a relief. As we were leaving, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. My heart sank. Need you to do me a huge favor. I showed the text to Sarah. What now? I groaned. Ignore it, she said. You're off duty tonight. But my curiosity and a lifetime of conditioning to be the helpful daughter got the better of me. What is it? I texted back. His reply was immediate. I'm out with investors. I left some important documents in my car. Can you go to my apartment, get my spare key, and bring them to me? They're in the glove compartment. He sent the address. It was a fancy steakhouse downtown, the kind of place where a single meal costs what I spend on groceries in a week. Unbelievable, Sarah said, reading the text over my shoulder. He's using you as a free courier service. It's what I do, I said with a sigh. I'm the reliable one. You're the exploited one, she corrected. Tell him no. Tell him to get a taxi and get them himself. I should have. I really should have. But a small, insidious part of me wanted to go. It was a chance to see inside his life, even for a moment. And besides, if I did this for him, maybe he would lay off the insults for a while. It was a foolish hope, but it was there. I'll do it, I told Sarah. It won't take long. She shook her head. You're too good to him, Clara. Leo's apartment was in a high-rise with a doorman and a view of the entire city. I had only been there once before, for a housewarming party where I felt completely out of place. I got the spare key from the concierge as Leo had instructed and took the silent, swift elevator up to the 30th floor. His apartment was immaculate and sterile, like a hotel suite. There was no personality, just expensive furniture and oversized art on the walls. It felt cold and empty. I found a spare car key on the marble kitchen counter, right where he said it would be. I took a taxi to the parking garage where he kept his car. The garage was cavernous and filled with luxury vehicles. I found his spot and used the key fob to unlock the doors. The car's interior lights glowed softly. I opened the passenger door and leaned in to check the glove compartment. It was stuffed with papers, napkins, and old receipts. Typical Leo. So organized in his business life, so messy in his personal space. I sifted through the clutter, looking for a folder or a large envelope. My fingers brushed against a thick stack of papers bound with a rubber band. This must be it. As I pulled them out, my phone, which I had been holding in my other hand, slipped and clattered onto the floor mat. I sighed and knelt down, reaching under the passenger seat to retrieve it. My hand fumbled in the dark space, brushing against the carpet, the seat springs, and then something else. A piece of paper, folded and wedged deep under the seat rail. It was probably just another old receipt, but something made me pull it out. The paper was thick, creamy, and crumpled, as if it had been grabbed and shoved there in a hurry. It was not a receipt. It was a letter in a matching envelope. The envelope was addressed, not to Leo, but to a Mr. Abernathy. The return address was for a law firm I had never heard of. Blackwood and Finch, attorneys at law. My heart started to beat a little faster. Who was Mr. Abernathy? Why was a letter from a law firm hidden in Leo's car? This was not part of his polished, successful image. This felt like something else. Something secret. I should have left it. I should have taken the documents he asked for and gone. But I could not. The poor girl comment, my mother's dismissive defense, the constant grinding pressure to feel small. It all coalesced into a single burning point of curiosity. My hands trembled slightly as I slipped the letter out of its envelope. The paper was heavy, official. I unfolded it. The letterhead was the same as the envelope, Blackwood and Finch. It was dated 2 weeks ago. I started to read. Dear Mr. Abernathy, this letter serves as a final notice regarding the outstanding balance on the commercial loan account 774B3-910, held by the entity Northgate Holdings, LLC. Despite our previous communications, payment of $112,450, 38 tiers, which was due 30 days ago, has not been received. I read the number again. Over $100,000. My mind struggled to process it. Leo talked a big game, but this was a staggering amount of money to be in arrears. The letter continued. As you are aware, this loan is secured by the commercial property located at 1450 Industrial Way. Failure to remit the full past due amount within 10 business days from the date of this letter will result in the initiation of foreclosure proceedings on said property. Foreclosure. The word seemed to leap off the page. Leo's business was not just in trouble, it was on the verge of collapse. But why was the letter addressed to Mr. Abernathy? And what was Northgate Holdings, LLC? Leo's company had a trendy, tech-sounding name, something like Innovate Digital. This was different. The final paragraph was the one that made the blood drain from my face. Furthermore, we must remind you that any default on this loan will trigger a full review of the loan's origination documents, including the personal guarantees provided by the listed principals. We trust this matter will be resolved swiftly to avoid such actions. Personal guarantees, listed principals. This was not just a business problem. It was personal. And it was a secret. A secret big enough to be shoved under a car seat and forgotten. I quickly folded the letter, my hands shaking, and tucked it into my purse. I grabbed the documents from the glove compartment, the ones he had actually sent me for, and shut the car door. My mind was racing. I stood there for a moment in the quiet concrete garage. The whole story Leo had built, the one my mother so eagerly promoted, was a lie. The fancy car, the expensive apartment, the condescending sneer. It was all a facade, hiding a mountain of debt and fear. He was not the successful son. He was a man on the brink of ruin. And I was the poor girl who had just found his secret. I delivered the documents to him at the steakhouse. I found him holding court at a large round table with 3 older men in expensive suits. He was laughing, a glass of red wine in his hand, the picture of confidence. He saw me hovering by the entrance and beckoned me over with an impatient flick of his wrist. Here, I said, handing him the folder. I kept my face neutral, my voice steady. Took you long enough, he muttered, not even making eye contact. He turned back to his guests. My sister, he said, a dismissive wave in my direction. Always happy to help. The men gave me polite, uninterested smiles. I was an errand girl, an interruption. I did not exist in their world. I'll see you later, I said, and walked away. As I left the restaurant, the anger I had been suppressing began to burn hot and clear. He had the audacity to call me poor girl, to mock my careful savings, while he was drowning in debt and facing foreclosure. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. That night, I could not sleep. I took out the letter and read it again and again. Northgate Holdings, LLC, 1450 Industrial Way, Mr. Abernathy. These were the pieces of a puzzle I was determined to solve. My first step was the internet. I started with the property address, 1450 Industrial Way. A quick search on the county assessor's website brought up the property records. It was a medium-sized warehouse in an industrial park on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place that could house a small manufacturing business or a distribution center. The owner was listed, just as the letter said, as Northgate Holdings, LLC. There was no individual's name attached, just the anonymous corporate entity. So that was a dead end for now. Next, I searched for the company itself. Northgate Holdings, LLC was registered in our state. The public filing documents were available online for a small fee. I paid it without a second thought. My house fund could spare $20 for this. This was an investment in the truth. The documents were dry and filled with legal jargon, but one section stood out. Registered agent and principals. The registered agent was a generic corporate services company, another dead end. But then I saw the list of principals. There was only one name listed. My breath caught in my throat. It was not Leo. It was not Mr. Abernathy. It was the name of my deceased uncle, our mother's brother, who had passed away 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, Uncle Robert. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. How could this be? A company founded and owned by a man who had been dead for 3 years? The company had taken out a massive loan, and it was recent, judging by the default notice. This was not just a lie. This was something else. Something illegal. My next search was for Mr. Abernathy. I tried searching the name along with the law firm Blackwood and Finch. Nothing. I tried searching for him in connection with Northgate Holdings. Still nothing. He was a ghost. I was getting frustrated. The pieces were not fitting together. I decided to call Sarah. I needed to talk this through with someone who was not part of the family drama. I met her for coffee the next morning before work. I laid it all out for her. The breakdown, Leo's comment, the secret errand, and the letter. I showed her the crumpled paper, and I told her what I had found online about the company and our dead uncle. Sarah listened intently, her eyes wide. When I finished, she let out a low whistle. Clara, this is big, like crime drama, big. I know, I said, my voice barely a whisper. What do I do? Okay, let's think about this logically, she said, switching into her practical, problem-solving mode. The company is in your uncle's name. He's deceased. So someone opened a company and took out a loan using a dead man's identity. That's fraud. Identity theft. It has to be Leo, I said. The letter was in his car. Almost certainly, she agreed. He's desperate. He's built this whole image of being a tech mogul. But it sounds like it's all smoke and mirrors. He needed cash and he couldn't get it legitimately, so he did this. But who is Mr. Abernathy? I asked. Why is the lawyer's letter addressed to him? Sarah tapped her chin, thinking. Maybe it's an alias? Or maybe it's the lawyer's name? No, that doesn't make sense. The letter is from the law firm. Wait a second. What if Abernathy isn't a person? What if it's a role? What do you mean? Like, what if the loan documents required a trustee or a financial manager to be named, and Leo just made someone up? She theorized. He invents Mr. Abernathy, a fictional manager for the fictional company, so all the scary legal letters go to a name that can't be traced back to him directly. It made a twisted kind of sense. It was another layer of deception, another way to distance himself from the crime. So the lawyers are sending warnings to a man who doesn't exist, I said. But they must have a mailing address for him. Where was the letter sent? Sarah asked. I pulled out the envelope. The address for Mr. Abernathy was a P.O. box in a town 50 miles away. It was all designed to be a maze of dead ends. He's panicking, Sarah said. That's why he was so sloppy. He probably went to the P.O. box, got the letter, read it in his car, freaked out, and shoved it under the seat. Then he forgot about it when he sent you to get the other documents. The image of Leo, the master of the universe, panicking over a letter made me feel a grim sense of satisfaction. So, what's my next move? I asked. Do I confront him? No, Sarah said firmly. Absolutely not. He'll just lie. He'll deny everything, and he'll find a way to turn it around on you. He'll say you're snooping, that you're trying to sabotage him out of jealousy. Your mom will back him up, and you'll be the villain. She was right. I knew she was. Any direct accusation would be met with a wall of denial and gaslighting. You need more than just this letter, she continued. You have a piece of the puzzle, a big piece. But you need something that connects Leo to Northgate Holdings directly. Something undeniable. Like what? Bank records, loan applications. Something with his signature on it, she said. The letter mentioned personal guarantees from the principals. The only listed principal is your dead uncle. But someone had to sign those papers. Someone had to show up at the bank. Someone had to provide a signature. A forged signature. How do I get that? I asked. I don't know, Sarah admitted. But that's your target. You need proof that links Leo directly to the fraud. Until you have that, you just have a theory. She was right. I needed concrete evidence. The next few days were tense. I saw Leo at our parents' house for Sunday dinner. He was back to his usual arrogant self, bragging about his business and the idiots he had to manage. We're about to launch a new feature that's going to revolutionize the industry, he declared, pouring himself a second glass of expensive wine he had brought. I can't go into details, but let's just say our competitors are going to be crying themselves to sleep. My mother beamed at him. Oh, Leo, that's wonderful. We're so proud of you. She turned to me. Isn't that wonderful, Clara? I forced a smile. That's great, Leo. He looked at me, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. My tone was too flat, too neutral. He was used to me being either sullen or awkwardly trying to keep the peace. This calm detachment was new. What's with you? He asked. Cat got your tongue? No, I said simply. I'm just tired. Long week. Still taking the bus? He asked, the sneer returning to his voice. I saw a listing for a decent used car online. I could send it to you. You could probably afford the monthly payments if you stopped buying avocado toast. The old me would have shrunk. The old me would have mumbled an excuse. The new me, the one who knew his secret, just looked him straight in the eye. I'm fine, Leo. I'm handling it. My calmness seemed to unnerve him more than any argument would have. He dropped the subject, but I saw him watching me for the rest of the dinner. He knew something was different. I started paying more attention to the little things. I listened more carefully when my mother talked about him. She was his biggest cheerleader, but she was also unwittingly his biggest liability. She loved to drop details to impress her friends and the rest of the family. A few days later, she called me, bubbling with excitement. You'll never guess what, she said. Leo is being featured in a magazine. A business magazine. Oh? I said, trying to sound interested. Which one? It's called Modern Entrepreneur, she said. They're doing a profile on him on the 30 Under 30 to watch. There's going to be a whole photo shoot and everything. This was a new development. A magazine profile meant public exposure. It also meant he would be at the peak of his arrogance and his carelessness. That's nice, Mom, I said. Nice? It's fantastic, she gushed. He's even taking me with him to a special luncheon for the honorees next week. It's at the Grandview Hotel. The Grandview, another temple of expensive taste. But then she said something that made my ears perk up. He had to send them some financial documents to verify his company's valuation, she added, her voice filled with pride. He was on the phone with his banker all morning, a man named Mr. Peterson at Sterling National Bank. Such a nice man. He handles all of Leo's important business. Sterling National Bank, Mr. Peterson. I felt a jolt. Like a key turning in a lock. This was a name. A real name at a real bank. This was a thread I could pull. After I got off the phone with my mom, I immediately looked up Sterling National Bank. It was a smaller private bank that specialized in commercial lending and wealth management, the kind of place that valued discretion. I thought about my next move. I could not just call the bank and ask for information on Leo. They would never give it to me. I needed a reason, a pretext. I thought about what Sarah had said. I needed to connect Leo to Northgate Holdings. The fraudulent loan was the key. But that loan was not with Sterling National. The letter was from Blackwood and Finch, acting on behalf of some other lender. I checked the letter again. There was no mention of the original lending institution. I was stuck. I had a name, Peterson, and a bank, Sterling National, that were connected to Leo's legitimate, public-facing business. But I needed to connect him to the secret, fraudulent business. Then an idea began to form. It was risky. It was deceptive, but it might be the only way. Banks that handle large commercial loans, especially fraudulent ones, have one big fear: liability. They are terrified of being implicated in a crime. If they suspect one of their clients is involved in fraud, even with another institution, they will move to protect themselves. My plan was to create a situation where Sterling National Bank would be forced to investigate Leo themselves. I needed to find out who the original lender was for the Northgate loan. The law firm, Blackwood and Finch, was the key. They were acting for the lender. I looked them up online. They were a high-powered firm specializing in debt collection and corporate litigation. Their website was slick and intimidating. I decided to call them, not as Clara, the sister, but as someone else. I used a voice-altering app on my phone, something I had downloaded for fun a while ago. It made my voice sound deeper, more masculine. I took a deep breath and dialed the number for the law firm. A receptionist answered. Blackwood and Finch, how may I direct your call? I'd like to speak to someone in your commercial collections department, I said in my disguised voice. It's regarding the Northgate Holdings account. I was transferred. A man with a tired voice came on the line. This is Mark. How can I help you? I'm calling about account number 774 B39 I said, reading the number from the letter. Northgate Holdings. I represent an interested party looking to potentially acquire the debt. This was a long shot. I was banking on the idea that a debt collection lawyer would be more interested in getting paid than in verifying my identity. Acquire the debt? Mark sounded surprised. It's in default. We're moving toward foreclosure. I'm aware, I said, trying to sound confident. My client sees a potential opportunity in the underlying asset. Before we make a formal offer, we need to know the name of the original lending institution. There was a pause. I could hear him typing. Why do you need that? Due diligence, I said smoothly. We need to understand the full chain of title on the loan. I'm sure you understand. I held my breath. He was hesitating. Look, I said, changing tactics. The borrower is clearly insolvent. You can spend the next 6 months in foreclosure proceedings, or you can get a check from my client next week. Your choice. But we don't move forward without knowing who we're ultimately dealing with. The magic word was check. The original lender is Pacific Crest Financial, he said finally. Now, if you want to make an offer... Thank you, I said. You'll be hearing from my office. I hung up before he could ask any more questions. My heart was pounding, but I had it. Pacific Crest Financial. Now for the second, more dangerous part of the plan. I drafted an email. It was anonymous, sent from a new, untraceable email address I created at the library. The subject line was, Urgent, regarding your client, Leo Vance. I sent it to the General Compliance Officer email address listed on Sterling National Bank's website. The email was short and to the point. To the Compliance Department, I am writing to you as a concerned party with information regarding potential fraudulent activity by one of your clients, Leo Vance, CEO of Innovate Digital. It has come to my attention that Mr. Vance may be connected to a separate entity, Northgate Holdings, LLC, which has recently defaulted on a significant commercial loan from Pacific Crest Financial. This loan was secured under highly irregular circumstances, possibly involving identity fraud. Given that Sterling National Bank manages Mr. Vance's primary business accounts, you may be exposed to significant financial and legal liability. I urge you to conduct your own internal investigation into any and all accounts and entities associated with Leo Vance. Specifically, you may want to review any transactions or fund transfers between Innovate Digital and any unknown third parties. I am providing this information anonymously to protect myself from reprisal. I hit send. There was no guarantee it would work. They might dismiss it as a crank email. But I was betting on the chilling effect of the words fraudulent activity and legal liability. No bank wants to be the last one to know that their star client is a criminal. The waiting was the hardest part. For 2 days, I heard nothing. I went to work. I took the bus. I ate my packed lunch. Life went on, but under the surface, I was a bundle of nerves. Leo did not contact me. My mother did not call with any new Leo-centric news. The silence was unnerving. Then, on the 3rd day, I got a call from my mother. She was in a full-blown panic. Clara, something terrible has happened, she cried, her voice choked with sobs. My stomach twisted. What is it, Mom? What's wrong? It's Leo. The bank. They've frozen all his accounts. His business account, his personal account, everything. I closed my eyes. It worked. It had actually worked. What? Why? I asked, feigning shock. He doesn't know. They won't tell him. They just said his accounts are under a compliance review. He can't make payroll. The magazine profile, the luncheon, it's all going to be ruined. His investors are calling him, and he can't access a single dollar. She was hysterical. He thinks someone is trying to sabotage him. He said it must be a competitor, someone who's jealous of his success. Oh, Mom, that's awful, I said. And the strange thing was, I almost meant it. Hearing the raw panic in her voice, I felt a flicker of pity. But then I remembered, poor girl. And the pity vanished, replaced by cold resolve. He's coming over here, she wailed. He's a mess. Your father is trying to calm him down. Can you come? He needs his family right now. Of course, I said. I'll be right there. This was it. The facade was cracking. I was not going over there to comfort him. I was going to watch him break. I took a taxi to my parents' house. The moment I walked in, the tension was suffocating. My father was sitting in his armchair, looking pale and worried. My mother was pacing the living room floor, wringing her hands. And Leo was a wreck. He was slumped on the sofa, his head in his hands. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his expensive clothes looked rumpled. The arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of pure terror. He looked up as I entered, his eyes wild. You, he spat. What are you doing here? Come to gloat? Leo, stop it, my father said, his voice weary. Clara is here to support you. Support me? He laughed, a bitter, broken sound. She's probably thrilled about this. She's always been jealous. I ignored him and looked at my mother. What exactly did the bank say? Just that his accounts are frozen pending a review, she repeated, her voice trembling. They mentioned something about an external tip. Someone reported him for something. Leo shot up from the sofa. It was my competitor, Mark Renshaw. I know it was him. He's been trying to poach my lead developer for months. He's trying to ruin me before my launch. He was spiraling, inventing enemies to avoid facing the truth. He was so used to being the smartest person in the room that he could not conceive of a world where his own actions had consequences. Did they mention anything specific? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Any specific transactions? No, he yelled. They were completely vague. It's a witch hunt. I decided to test the waters, to plant a seed. That's so strange, I said, my brow furrowed in thought. A compliance review. That's usually about money laundering, or fraud, isn't it? The word fraud hung in the air. Leo flinched as if I had struck him. My mother stopped pacing. My father looked at me, a new kind of worry in his eyes. Don't be ridiculous, Clara, my mother snapped. Leo would never do anything like that. I'm not saying he would, I said innocently. I'm just saying that's what those reviews are for. Maybe there was a mistake, a crossed wire, a name that got mixed up with someone else's. I let the suggestion hang there, a name that got mixed up. Leo was staring at me now, his eyes narrowed. The panic was still there, but now it was mixed with suspicion. He was smart. I had to give him that. He was starting to connect the dots. My strange calmness at dinner. My sudden interest in the details of the bank's review. What do you know about this? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. This was the moment. The first real confrontation. I could back down or I could push. I chose to push. I don't know anything, Leo, I said, meeting his gaze. I'm just worried. It sounds serious, especially with that big magazine feature coming up. They're going to want to verify your financials, right? A frozen account is going to look bad. I was twisting the knife, using his own ambition against him. The magazine profile was his dream. The thought of it being jeopardized was his nightmare. It will be sorted out, he snarled, but there was no conviction in his voice. It's a misunderstanding. I hope so, I said gently, because if it's not, a foreclosure can be so messy. I said the word quietly, almost a whisper, but it landed in the silent room like a bomb. Leo's face went completely white. He looked like he had seen a ghost. My mother stared at me, her mouth slightly open, confused. Foreclosure? What are you talking about? My father leaned forward. Clara, what do you mean? Leo took a step toward me. How do you know that word? He hissed. I did not flinch. I just looked at him. It's just a word, Leo. Something that happens when people don't pay their bills. I'm sure it has nothing to do with you. I had him. He knew that I knew. He did not know how, but he knew. The power dynamic in the room had shifted completely. I was no longer the poor girl. I was the one who held the secret. He stared at me for a long moment, his mind racing, trying to figure out how I could possibly know. He must have replayed the last few weeks in his head, searching for his mistake. The errand, the car, the letter. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He had found it. You were in my car, he whispered, the accusation raw. You sent me to your car, I corrected him calmly. You needed your documents for your investors. You snooped, he accused, his voice rising again. Desperate to paint me as the villain. You went through my things. Leo, what is she talking about? My mother demanded, her voice shrill. What foreclosure? He ignored her. All his focus was on me. You have no idea what you're messing with, he threatened. On the contrary, I said, my voice as cold as ice. I think for the first time I know exactly what I'm messing with. And so does your bank. I turned and walked out of the house, leaving a scene of chaos behind me. I could hear my mother shouting my name, demanding an explanation. I could hear my father trying to intervene. But I did not stop. As I walked down the street to the bus stop, I felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. I had set a fire, and I had no idea how big it would get. But I knew one thing for sure. No one was ever going to call me poor girl again. The next 48 hours were a storm. My phone blew up with calls and texts from my mother. First, they were demanding and angry. What did you do? How could you? You're ruining your brother. Then, as the reality of the situation at the bank settled in, they became pleading. Please, Clara, call me. We need to talk. Leo is falling apart. You have to help him. I did not answer. I needed silence to think. I knew Leo and my mother would be in damage control mode, trying to spin a story that would make me the villain and him the victim. I could not afford to get drawn into their web of manipulation. Sarah called, and I picked up immediately. I heard from my mom, I said, my voice flat. It's bad. Bad for them or bad for you? She asked. Bad for them, I admitted, which felt good and also terrifying. You did what you had to do, she said. He was committing a crime, Clara, and he was using it to humiliate you. You just leveled the playing field. I did more than that, I said. I dropped the word foreclosure. He knows that I know about the letter. There was a pause. Okay, Sarah said slowly. So the Cold War just turned hot. What's his next move? He'll try to discredit me, I predicted. He'll tell my parents I'm a liar, that I'm making it all up because I'm jealous. He'll try to isolate me. And your mom will believe him, Sarah finished for me. Every word, I confirmed. My prediction came true that evening. My father called. His voice was strained, heavy with a sadness that broke my heart. Clara, I need to understand what's happening, he said without any preamble. What did Mom and Leo tell you? I asked. He sighed. Your mother is convinced you've cooked up some scheme to hurt your brother. Leo is saying you found an old, irrelevant letter and are trying to use it to blackmail him. Blackmail. Of course. That would be his spin. Dad, I said, my voice steady. Did he deny it? Did he deny that Northgate Holdings exists? Did he deny that it's in default on a loan? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. He was evasive, my father admitted. He said it was a complicated business dealing that went sour. Something from a long time ago that has nothing to do with him now. It's not from a long time ago, Dad. The default notice is 2 weeks old. The company is registered in Uncle Robert's name. I heard him take a sharp breath. Robert? Your Uncle Robert? Yes, I said. Think about it. How is that possible? I don't know, he stammered. Leo is lying to you, I said, my voice softening. He's lying to all of us. And Mom is helping him. She's so invested in his success story that she can't see the truth. Your mother. She just wants to protect her children, he said weakly. She wants to protect her favorite child. I corrected him gently. Dad, I didn't do this to be cruel. I did this because I'm tired of being the family disappointment while he builds a fantasy life on lies and, I think, on crimes. He was quiet for a long time. I could picture him in his study, surrounded by books and the quiet integrity he had tried to instill in both of us. An integrity that Leo had completely abandoned. What did you do, Clara? He finally asked. The bank. Leo says you must have contacted them. I sent an anonymous email to their compliance department, I confessed. I told them they should investigate their client for potential fraud. I didn't give them any proof. I just pointed them in the right direction. They are doing the rest themselves. If Leo is innocent, they'll find nothing and this will all blow over. I let that sink in. The if. But he's not innocent, is he? My father whispered. No, Dad, I said sadly. He's not. The next day, I decided it was time to take the next step. I had the name of the bank, Sterling National, and I had the name of Leo's banker, Mr. Peterson. I also had the information about the fraudulent loan with Pacific Crest Financial. I now had enough information to appear credible. I needed one more piece of the puzzle, the smoking gun that Sarah had talked about, the loan application itself, the one with the forged signature, the one that would prove the crime beyond any doubt. And I had a feeling Sterling National Bank's compliance department was already looking for it. My job was to get a copy for myself. I called Sterling National Bank. I did not ask for Mr. Peterson. I asked for the compliance department. I was put through to a woman with a brisk, no-nonsense voice. Compliance, this is Eleanor Vance, she said. It took me a second to realize she had said my last name. She must have had caller ID. My name is Clara Vance, I said. I believe you may be conducting a review of my brother Leo Vance's accounts. There was a cautious silence. We are not at liberty to discuss any client's business, she said formally. I understand, I said. However, I believe I am the source of the anonymous tip you received, and I have more information that might be helpful to your investigation. This got her attention. Go on, she said, her voice still wary. Leo's public-facing company is Innovate Digital, I began, but he is also the operator of a shell corporation called Northgate Holdings, LLC. That company is registered under the name of our deceased uncle, Robert Miller. I heard the soft click of a keyboard. She was taking notes. Northgate Holdings has a large commercial loan with another institution, Pacific Crest Financial, I continued. That loan is currently in default, and the lender is preparing foreclosure proceedings. I believe Leo has been using funds from his Innovate Digital accounts, the ones he holds with you, to try and service the debt on this fraudulent loan. This was the key. Connecting the two entities, showing that the clean money at her bank was being used to cover up the dirty money elsewhere. This put Sterling National right in the middle of the mess. This is a very serious allegation, Miss Vance, Eleanor said, her tone shifting from cautious to concerned. I know, I said. And I believe there's more. The letter I found mentioned personal guarantees on the Northgate loan. The only listed principal is my dead uncle. Someone had to sign those documents. Someone had to forge his signature. Do you have a copy of this letter? She asked. I do, I said. And do you have any other evidence? This was my chance. I had to play this perfectly. I believe the evidence you need is in the loan origination file at Pacific Crest Financial, I said. Specifically, the application and the personal guarantee with the forged signature. I suspect if you were to obtain that file and compare that signature to the signature on Leo's account documents with you, you would find them to be a very close match. I was not just giving her information. I was telling her how to do her job. I was showing her the direct path to uncovering the fraud. Our bank has a relationship with Pacific Crest, she said, almost to herself. We can request those documents as part of our interbank fraud prevention protocol. I thought you might, I said. Miss Vance, she said, her voice now sharp and focused. Why are you doing this? What do you want? I want two things, I said. First, I want Leo to be held accountable for what he has done. He has built his life on a foundation of lies, and he has hurt a lot of people in the process. And the second thing? I want a copy of that loan application, I said. The one with the signature. Once you have it, I want you to send it to me. Not as an official document from the bank, but as an anonymous package, the same way I sent you the tip. There was a long pause. I had just asked a bank compliance officer to leak a confidential document to me. I was asking her to break the rules. Why? She asked. If we confirm the fraud, we will take action. We will report it to the authorities. It will be handled. It won't, I said, my voice hardening. It will be handled by lawyers and banks. Leo will declare bankruptcy. He'll get a slap on the wrist. My family, specifically my mother, will find a way to sweep it under the rug. They'll paint him as a victim of a bad business deal. They will rewrite history. I've seen them do it my whole life. I took a breath. I don't want a legal victory. I want a personal one. I want the truth to come out, in my own way, on my own terms. For that, I need the proof in my hand. I could hear her thinking. I had given her the roadmap to protect her bank from a massive liability. In return, I was asking for a single piece of paper. It was a trade. I cannot promise anything, she said finally, her voice rigid and official again. But I have your contact information. If any publicly available documents become relevant, we will be in touch. It was not a yes, but it was not a no. It was the best I was going to get. I hung up the phone, my entire body trembling with adrenaline. I had done it. I had pushed all the pieces into place. Now, all I could do was wait for them to fall. The call from my mother came a week later. It was not the hysterical, pleading voice of before. This was something new, something cold and brittle. Your father and I need to see you, she said. There was no hello, no how are you, just the command. We're coming over to your apartment. We'll be there in an hour. She hung up before I could respond. I knew what this was. This was an ambush. Leo had failed to intimidate me. Pleading had failed to move me. Now it was time for the final tactic, the family intervention, designed to shame me back into line. I spent the next hour preparing myself. I made a pot of coffee. I sat at my small kitchen table and went over everything in my head. The letter, the property records, the company filing, my conversations with my father, with Sarah, with the bank. I was ready. When the doorbell rang, I took a deep breath and opened it. My mother and father stood there. My father looked exhausted, his face etched with worry. My mother's face was a mask of cold fury. She brushed past me into the apartment without a word. My father gave me a small, apologetic look and followed her in. But they were not alone. Behind them, standing in the hallway, was Leo. He looked different. The panic was gone. He looked calm, composed, and confident. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit, and he had a thin, leather-bound folder in his hand. He gave me a slow, triumphant smile. Hello, Clara, he said, his voice smooth as silk. I believe we have some things to discuss. My blood ran cold. This was not the broken man I had seen on my parents' sofa. This was the old Leo, the predator, and he looked like he had just won. My mother stood in the center of my small living room, her arms crossed, radiating disapproval. Clara, what you have done is unforgivable, she began, her voice shaking with controlled rage. You have tried to destroy your brother, your own family, out of petty jealousy. My father sank into the armchair, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Leo leaned against the doorframe, that smug smile still plastered on his face. Mom, you don't understand, I started, but she cut me off. I understand perfectly, she snapped. You've always resented Leo's success. You see him building a wonderful life for himself and you can't stand it. So you invent these vicious lies to tear him down. Leo pushed himself off the doorframe and walked into the room, holding up the leather folder. It's all right, Mom, he said in a soothing voice. I can handle this. Clara's just confused. She found some old business papers and her imagination ran away with her. He opened the folder and placed a document on my coffee table. This is what you were so worried about, right? Northgate Holdings? I looked at the paper. It was a certificate of dissolution for a limited liability company. It was dated last week. It stated that Northgate Holdings, LLC had been officially dissolved, its affairs concluded. It was a holding company for a real estate deal that fell through years ago, Leo explained, his voice patient as if talking to a child. I was helping a business associate manage the paperwork. When the deal died, the company was left dormant. Yes, there was some old debt attached to it, which, as you can see, has now been fully settled. He placed another paper on the table. It was a letter from Pacific Crest Financial, confirming that the loan for Northgate Holdings had been paid in full. The foreclosure proceedings had been canceled. I stared at the papers, my mind racing. Paid in full? How? It was over $100,000. Where did he get that kind of money, especially with his accounts frozen? As for using Uncle Robert's name, Leo continued with a sad shake of his head. That was his own idea, before he passed. He was a silent partner in the initial venture. We just never got around to changing the paperwork after, well, it was an oversight. Sentimental, really. It was a brilliant story. Plausible. Tidy. It painted him as a responsible businessman cleaning up old messes and me as a hysterical meddler. My mother was nodding along, her eyes shining with vindicated pride. You see, Clara? A misunderstanding. And you tried to turn it into a federal case. You called his bank. You could have ruined him. Leo looked at me, his eyes glittering with malice. My bank, after a thorough review, has concluded that the anonymous tip was baseless. My accounts have been unfrozen. The magazine profile is back on track. In fact, the luncheon is tomorrow. He was gloating. He had weathered the storm. He had found a way to pay off the debt, to create a paper trail that made him look innocent. He had won. How? I whispered, looking at the letter from the bank. How did you pay it off? My mother stepped forward. Her face, which had been so full of anger, was now filled with a strange, defiant righteousness. We helped him, she said. Your father and I. We took out a second mortgage on our house to give him the money. I looked at my father. He would not meet my eyes. He just stared at his hands, his shoulders slumped in defeat. They had mortgaged their future, the home I grew up in, to bail out their golden son, to cover up his crime. It was the right thing to do, my mother said fiercely, to protect our family from your vicious attacks. I felt the floor drop out from under me. They had not just chosen him over me. They had sacrificed their own financial security to preserve his lie. The poor girl was not me anymore. It was them. They had just chained themselves to a massive debt, all to protect the architect of their ruin. Leo closed his folder with a soft, final snap. So, I think we're done here. I accept your apology, Clara. Just try to think before you act next time. Not everyone is as forgiving as I am. He was rewriting history in real time, magnanimously forgiving me for a crime he had committed. I just stared at him, speechless. I had no proof. The letter I had is now meaningless. He had an answer for everything. He had won. He had beaten me. "We're leaving," my mother announced. "Your father and I are going to help Leo prepare for his big day tomorrow." She walked to the door, then turned back. Her eyes filled with disappointment. "I don't know what's happened to you, Clara. I really don't." They left. Leo gave me one last, triumphant smirk before closing the door behind him. I was alone in my apartment, surrounded by the tidy, damning paperwork he had left behind. I sank onto my sofa, the silence of the room pressing in on me. I had lost. I had fired my only shot, and he had caught the bullet, melted it down, and forged it into a medal for himself. Tomorrow he would be celebrated. He would be on top of the world, and I would be the jealous, crazy sister who had tried to tear him down. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Are you okay? Just saw your parents' car pull away. They looked intense." I did not have the energy to type, so I called her. I told her everything, my voice a dead monotone. The dissolved company, the paid-off loan, the second mortgage, the smug look on Leo's face. "He won, Sarah," I whispered. "He completely outmaneuvered me." "Clara, listen to me," she said, her voice urgent. "He didn't win. He just bought himself time. He paid off one debt by creating another, much bigger one, and he dragged your parents into it. This isn't over." "It feels over," I said. "He has an answer for everything. He even explained away using a dead man's identity." "It was a lie," Sarah insisted. "A good lie, but a lie. You know it. And I bet your dad knows it too. He's just trapped." "What can I do?" I asked, my voice cracking. "He's going to that luncheon tomorrow, and he's going to be celebrated as a genius, and my parents are going to be there cheering for him." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Then you have to go too," she said. "What? Go where? To the luncheon?" "Yes," she said. "You can't let him have his victory speech without a rebuttal. You can't let him control the narrative." "He'll have me thrown out," I said. "And what would I even say? He's already discredited me." "You don't need to say anything yet," she said. "You just need to be there. You need to stand in that room and look him in the eye. You need to remind him that you know the truth. Don't let him forget that this victory cost him his parents' home." The thought was terrifying, walking into his moment of triumph. But the alternative, sitting in my apartment while he toasted his own success, was worse. It was surrender. "I don't have a ticket," I said weakly. "It's at a hotel," Sarah reasoned. "There will be people coming and going. You can get in. Just act like you belong there. Act like you belong there." It was the story of Leo's life. Maybe I could borrow a page from his book. Just then, there was a soft knock on my door. It was not the loud, demanding knock of my family. It was hesitant. I looked through the peephole. It was a courier holding a plain brown envelope. I opened the door. "Clara Vance?" he asked. I nodded. He handed me the envelope, no signature required, and left. My hands trembled as I closed the door. The envelope had no return address. It was thin, just a few sheets of paper inside. I tore it open. Inside were 3 pages. The first page was a copy of the original loan application for Northgate Holdings, LLC, submitted to Pacific Crest Financial. The second page was the personal guarantee. And at the bottom of both pages, on the signature line next to the typed name Robert Miller, was a signature. A familiar, confident scrawl that I had seen 1,000 times on birthday cards and checks. It was not my uncle's signature. It was Leo's. The third page was a copy of the signature card from Leo's account at Sterling National Bank, the one he had signed when he opened his legitimate business account. The two signatures, the forgery and the real one, were identical. At the bottom of the page, there was a small, handwritten note in neat block letters. Truth needs a voice. E.V. Eleanor Vance, the compliance officer. She had done it. She had sent me the smoking gun. I sank to the floor, the papers clutched in my hand, and I started to laugh. It was a wild, unhinged sound, a mixture of relief and pure, unadulterated fury. He had not won. He had not outmaneuvered me. He had just walked into a bigger trap, and I was holding the key. The luncheon was being held in the main ballroom of the Grandview Hotel. The 30 Under 30 event was a major affair for the city's business community. I knew it would be crowded, which was my only advantage. I dressed carefully. Not in a fancy dress, but in a simple, professional black suit I had bought for job interviews years ago. I did not want to look like a guest. I wanted to look like I had business there. I put the copies of the loan application and the signatures into a slim folder. The originals I locked away in a safe place. When I arrived at the hotel, the lobby was buzzing. People in expensive suits and cocktail dresses were streaming towards the ballroom. I walked with purpose, my head held high. Just as Sarah had advised, act like you belong. No one gave me a second glance. I did not go into the ballroom right away. I found a spot in the foyer where I could see the entrance. I watched as the city's elite mingled, shaking hands and laughing. Then I saw them. My mother was radiant, wearing a new dress, her face glowing with pride. My father was beside her, looking stiff and uncomfortable in his best suit. And between them was Leo. He was in his element, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, his arm draped possessively around our mother's shoulders. He was the king of his own fraudulent court. I waited until most of the guests had gone inside and the luncheon was about to begin. Then I walked into the ballroom. It was a huge, opulent room with dozens of round tables, a stage at the front, and a massive screen displaying the logo for Modern Entrepreneur magazine. I found an empty chair at a table near the back, partially hidden by a pillar. The lights dimmed, and the editor of the magazine stepped up to the podium. He began his speech, talking about innovation, disruption, and the bright future of business. My heart was pounding in my chest. What was I doing? What was my plan? I had the proof, but what good was it if I just sat in the back of the room? The editor began to introduce the honorees one by one. Each one would stand up, wave to applause, and a short video biography would play on the screen. I watched as a dozen young entrepreneurs had their moment. Then the editor said his name. And now, a man whose work in the digital space is truly revolutionary. The founder and CEO of Innovate Digital, Leo Vance. The room erupted in applause. Leo stood up, beaming. He helped my mother to her feet and gave her a kiss on the cheek, a perfect staged moment of the devoted son. My father clapped weakly, his eyes fixed on his plate. Leo's video began to play. It was a slick production, filled with shots of him in his office, pointing at whiteboards, looking thoughtful and laughing with his team. It was all a performance. In the video, he spoke in a voiceover. "Success isn't about what you have," he said, his voice earnest and deep. "It's about integrity. It's about building something real, something lasting. My father always taught me that your name is the most valuable thing you can own." The hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe. The video ended and the applause swelled again. Leo took his seat, looking overwhelmed with false humility. The editor returned to the podium. "In a moment, we'll hear from a few of our honorees, but first let's eat." Waiters began to file out with plates of food. This was my chance. It was now or never. I stood up and began to walk towards the stage. I moved quickly, purposefully. A few people turned to look at me, confused. A security guard near the stage took a step forward, his brow furrowed. I did not look at him. I looked directly at the editor, who was just stepping away from the podium. "Excuse me," I said, my voice loud and clear, carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a correction that needs to be made." All eyes were on me. The editor stared, speechless. The security guard was moving towards me now. In the audience, I saw Leo's face. His smile had vanished. His eyes were wide with shock, then narrowed with pure hatred. My mother looked horrified. My father looked awake. For the first time all day, he looked truly awake. "My name is Clara Vance," I announced. "Leo Vance is my brother, and I'm so proud of him for talking about the value of a name." I had the room's attention. I had to be smart. I could not just start screaming accusations. "He said his father taught him that his name is the most valuable thing he owns," I continued, my voice shaking only slightly. "And he's right. But a name is only valuable when it's your own." I took the folder and opened it. I walked over to the document camera on the podium, the one they had been using to show close-ups of the magazine. I placed the loan application under it. The image of the application, with Northgate Holdings LLC at the top, flashed onto the giant screens around the room. A confused murmur went through the crowd. "This is a loan application for a company called Northgate Holdings," I said. "A company that was, until last week, in default for over $100,000 and facing foreclosure." I saw Leo jump to his feet. "Security! Get her out of here! She's crazy!" The guard was beside me now, his hand on my arm. "Wait," I said, looking him in the eye. "Just let me finish." I looked out at the sea of confused faces. "Leo will tell you this has nothing to do with him. He'll say it was an old, dead business dealing. He'll say the principal of this company was our uncle, Robert Miller, who passed away 3 years ago." I zoomed the camera in, right on the signature line. "And he's right. That is what the paperwork says. Robert Miller." I paused, letting the name sink in. But Robert Miller didn't sign this. He couldn't have. He was dead. The murmurs grew louder. People were looking at Leo, who was frozen, his face a mask of fury and panic. "So, who did sign it?" I asked the room. I then placed the other document under the camera, the one with both signatures side by side, Leo's real signature and the forgery. They were identical. "My brother, Leo Vance, signed it," I said, my voice ringing with clarity. "He used a dead man's identity to fraudulently obtain a loan. He built his empire on a crime." The room was in stunned silence. No one was eating. No one was talking. They were all just staring at the screens, at the 2 identical signatures. "He'll tell you this is a lie," I went on, my voice gaining strength. "He'll tell you these documents are fake, but he just proved they're real. How? By paying off this fraudulent loan last week? And how did he get the money to do that with his own accounts frozen? He had our parents take out a second mortgage on their home. He put their future at risk to cover up his crime, all so he could be here today, accepting an award for his integrity." I looked directly at my parents. My mother was covering her mouth with her hand, her face ashen. My father was on his feet, staring at the screen, then at Leo, his face a storm of dawning horror and betrayal. "I have the original documents," I said, my voice dropping. "And I have already spoken with the compliance department at Sterling National Bank. I'm sure the editor of Modern Entrepreneur will be interested to know that their 30 under 30 honoree is the subject of a multi-bank fraud investigation." I stepped away from the podium. The security guard just stood there. His hand dropped from my arm, looking as stunned as everyone else. Leo was sputtering, trying to speak, but no words came out. He looked from me, to the screen, to the faces of the investors and colleagues staring at him with contempt and disgust. The editor of the magazine was already on his phone, his face grim. Then, my father moved. He walked away from his table, past the gawking guests, and straight up to the stage. He did not look at me. He walked right up to Leo, who was still standing by his chair, paralyzed. "Is it true?" my father asked, his voice low but carrying in the silent room. Leo just stared at him, his jaw working. "Is it true?" my father repeated, his voice like thunder. Leo's composure finally shattered. His face crumpled. I was going to pay it back, he whispered, a pathetic excuse. I just needed more time. It was a confession. My father looked at him for a long moment, his face filled with a sorrow so deep it was painful to watch. Then he turned and looked at my mother. Helen, he said, his voice breaking. You knew, and you made us mortgage our home for this lie. My mother burst into tears, a loud, ugly sob that echoed in the silent ballroom. The spell was broken. People started talking at once. Phones were out, recording. The beautiful, orchestrated event had devolved into a public spectacle of humiliation. Leo looked around at the wreckage of his life, at the faces of the people who had admired him moments before. He saw only judgment. He sank into his chair, covered his face with his hands, a fallen king in a court of his own making. I turned and walked out of the ballroom. No one stopped me. I walked through the foyer, out of the hotel, and into the bright afternoon sun. I had not raised my voice. I had not screamed or cried. I had simply told the truth. And the truth had been enough. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The magazine immediately retracted Leo's award and issued a public statement. His investors pulled their funding, and Innovate Digital collapsed within a week. The bank, along with the authorities, launched a full-scale criminal investigation. My father, true to his word, did not help cover it up. He hired a lawyer, not for Leo, but for himself and my mother, to deal with the financial fallout of the second mortgage and the fraud. He was a broken man, but a man of principle. He insisted that Leo face the consequences of his actions alone. Leo and my mother were forced to sell everything. The fancy car was repossessed. The family home, my childhood home, was sold to pay back the second mortgage and to begin paying restitution. Leo moved into a tiny rented room. My mother went to live with her sister in another state, too ashamed to face anyone. I received a long, rambling email from her, full of accusations and self-pity. She blamed me for everything, for airing our private family matters in public, for not having compassion, for destroying Leo's life. I deleted it without replying. My father, on the other hand, called me. We met for coffee in a quiet cafe. I am so sorry, Clara, he said, his eyes filled with a pain that I knew would never fully go away. I was blind. I saw what I wanted to see, not what was really there. I failed you. You didn't fail me, Dad, I said, and I meant it. You were lied to. I should have listened to you, he said. I should have seen how he treated you. The way he talked to you, the poor girl comments. I always told myself he was just joking. He shook his head. It wasn't a joke. It was contempt, and I let it happen. We sat in silence for a while. The house is gone, he said quietly. It's just a house, Dad, I said. It was our home, he replied. But your mother and I, we don't have a home together anymore. Not after this. He confirmed they were separating. The lie had destroyed more than just Leo's career. It had shattered our family. A few weeks later, a check arrived in the mail. It was from my father. It was for the full amount of my house down payment savings, plus a generous amount of interest. The memo line just said, "For your future." I cried when I saw it. It was not about the money. It was the acknowledgement, the validation. With the money, I finally did what I had been working towards for so long. I bought a small house on a quiet street with a big oak tree in the front yard. It was modest, but it was mine. I paid for it with money I had earned and money that had been rightfully returned to me. I also bought a car, a brand new, reliable, completely boring sedan. It was not fancy, but it started every time I turned the key. The air conditioning worked perfectly. One afternoon, I was sitting on my new front porch talking to Sarah on the phone. "So, have you heard from him?" she asked. "Leo?" "No," I said. "Not a word. Dad said he's facing fraud charges. He'll probably get probation, community service. His life as he knew it is over." And your mom? Still with my aunt, I said. She sends messages through Dad sometimes, asking if I'll talk to her. I'm not ready. I don't blame you, Sarah said. You need to heal. As we were talking, a beat-up old car I did not recognize drove slowly down my street. It stopped in front of my house. The driver's side window rolled down. It was Leo. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. His clothes were cheap and ill-fitting. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out emptiness. He stared at my house, at my new car in the driveway, at me sitting on the porch. He did not say anything. He just looked. He was looking at the life I had built. A life that was real. A life that was paid for. A life that was everything his had pretended to be. I did not smile. I did not sneer. I just met his gaze, my expression unreadable. I held up my keys, the keys to my house and my car, and gave them a little jiggle. A small, quiet gesture that said everything. He stared for another moment, then his window rolled up and he drove away. I never saw him again. Life moved on. My father and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. He would come over for dinner every Sunday. We would work in my small garden. We did not talk about Leo or my mother much. We talked about the future. One evening, I was cleaning out a drawer and I found it. The original crumpled letter from Blackwood and Finch. The one I had found under his car seat. The catalyst for everything. I looked at it for a long time, at the name Mr. Abernathy, the ghost Leo had invented to hide from his sins. I took the letter out to the small barbecue pit in my backyard. I lit a match and watched as the paper caught fire. I watched the words final notice and foreclosure turn to black ash and float away into the evening sky. It was over. The debt had been paid. Not just the financial debt, but the emotional one too. My phone rang. It was an unknown number from the same area code as the town where my aunt lived. I knew it was my mother. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I declined the call. I was not the responsible, accommodating daughter anymore. I was not the poor girl who had to keep the peace at her own expense. I was free, and they had finally learned what it feels like to be small.